Hello everyone. So whether you are somewhere waiting in traffic, or you're folding your laundry in the room, or probably you're sipping Zobo or any cold carbonated drink that you've gotten, you're probably walking back from class while listening to this very episode, and say welcome to Behind the Veil. How are you guys doing? And yeah, I understand the fact that this podcast may seem as though it's a monologue, but yeah, I just feel that it's some way of connecting with you guys, asking how you're doing, even though in a way we are not in a physical room, and yeah, out there, so there's not like there's some sort of a response you get, but I just feel that whenever I record a podcast or whenever I record an episode, I just feel as though I'm in a room with you guys and we're sort of having a conversation. So it's physical, not as though I'm the only one just speaking to empty spaces. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. So I just feel like asking, and I should ask. I feel I should ask, yeah. That come on, how you guys doing? I hope you're enjoying the fatherhood of God. That's what I would say. I hope you're truly enjoying the fatherhood of God. So yeah, again, thank you for tuning into this episode. And if this is not your first time, I'm sure by the mercy of God that this episode has been a contribution of value to you. And if this is your first time, where have you been? where have you been? Come on, man, where have you been? So welcome, and you can do well to listen to this episode, of course, and go back and listen to the previous episode, and I'm sure that God would do something through those episodes to you. And yeah, feel free to share, of course. Share the podcast if you've been blessed. Share with your friends and even your enemies, right? Share with everyone that crosses your mind. Right before I move on to what we have today, or what I want to just discuss in this episode, I'll probably just share my view on it. But since the beginning of this episode, one of the things I do is that I try as much as possible to go back and listen to every of the episode, even though I've not listened to all. But of course, I can say by God's grace, I've listened to 75% of every of the thing I've released, every episode I've released. So I listened to the last one, and I think I've listened to the last 5. And one thing I've realized is that of the sound, okay? And I wouldn't say it's post-production editing, and I wouldn't say it's the mic, even though I feel it's the mic at some point. But in all honesty, I know it can get better. This episode can get better. This podcast can get better along the line, from the way I talk down to post-production editing. Yeah, I feel it can get better, and this is just an avenue for me to grow. So I'm not putting pressure on myself to want to deliver, for I'm committed to excellence. By God's grace, by God's grace, I am committed to excellence. So I'll keep improving. I'll keep doing what I need to do to make sure that I get better. So even though I may not have the necessary resources now, as soon as God starts providing, I would get better. But before then, I'll do my own bit to make sure that everything I'm doing, down to the editing, even down to the way I'm speaking, doing much more better than I was before. So why am I saying all of these things, especially now? Considering the fact that we're even talking about careers and corners in romantic relationship, I remember at some point that I was talking about preparation, right? And one thing I would want to say, if I do by God's grace have the opportunity to speak to people, is that one of the proof that you have faith in whatever God has told you to do is that you are prepared for it. Okay, so you are not giving in a Jessica attitude. You are not doing it anyhow. You are not married to mediocrity. Like, you're giving it your best. Every opportunity you have, you're improving, right? Because I could remember as to when I was supposed to start this podcast sometime last year, I didn't. Okay, what was I doing? I was busy watching YouTube videos that has to do with editing. Yeah, that has to do with podcasts, that has to do with editing, and trying to learn from people that have had their own podcast and just do something, because as just make sure that whatever I'm doing is excellent. And I could remember also that when someone listened to my podcast for the first time, he made a comment that stuck, like it just stayed with, that stayed with me, and he said, I didn't expect the podcast to be like this. I didn't expect the episodes to be like this based on the way I just delivered, right? So even I also didn't expect it to be the way it was or the way it is right now, because I was like, okay, let me just, it's not to just speak, right? But you need to prepare. I didn't really know I was going to start learning editing. I didn't know I was going to start doing all of this stuff. So I just could get into a new terrain. It's just to record now. So what are we doing editing for? Where are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Part of auto docking, the part of knowing about mono, stereo. Even though there are still some technicality I've not learned, right? But I just said, let me just give it my best shot. Let me just give it the excellence. But one thing is certain, I would get better along the line. Okay, I would get better along the line. So linking it to what we have now, many of us, we are in a way, or in quotes, design relationship, romantic relationship, but we are not prepared emotionally. We are not prepared mentally. You're not just prepared, because it takes work. Relationship takes work. For it to work, it takes work. You just need to be prepared, right? You just need to be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared. You cannot overrule in preparation. Of course, you may not over prepare, but to be on the safe side, you just need to be prepared. Prepared emotionally, you need to be prepared. Mentally, you need to be prepared. Even the way you relate with other people, you need to be prepared, because it takes commitment. So if this podcast is taking commitment from me, of course I am committed to it. I must be committed to it, no matter what God has said. For me to know that God has said something, I need to commit myself into this project. Do record when I don't feel like recording, speak when I don't feel like speaking, right? Because right now I think I have even slacked, and let me be vulnerable, because the plan was to release episode every week, right? And I have not done that for like 2-3 months now. Even today I was just like, I don't even feel like recording this stuff, but I'm still, by God's grace, I don't want to promise and fail, because I realized that I do that a lot. So I will try as much as possible to see what I can do to make sure I improve my schedule, to do something quite better, and if to deliver every week. And of course, there are things I want to do, but I'm still trusting God for resources. But whatever it may be, I must make sure that even before those resources come, I need to be at my best. I need to prepare. I need to know what I'm doing, like have an idea, do something, get better than the way I was or the way I am now. So the same thing with relationship, be prepared for it. Like we've heard time and again as regard reading books, attending relationship seminars. Honestly, it's actually good though. But let me not get ahead of myself. Let me just move right to what we have today. And from the previous episode, you would have realized that we are talking about Kairos and Chronos. Okay, the difference between divine timing and human timelines. And yes, for a while now we're talking about timelines that have been imposed on us by society, family, and even the one we've done by ourselves that leads to undue pressure. Okay, so in this episode, in the last episode, right, I shared a story that Anada is a story as regards rushing, because the time was going, and we have another story that I shared as to do with Binga. Okay, the testimony of waiting on God until he has a clear answer, a very clear and firm conviction. And one thing I've said is that it's not about how long you've waited, okay, but it's about when everyone says it's now, like now is the right time. That speaks about Kairos. And if we are taking the step further, okay, if we're talking about one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking realities, one of the things that we've had to deal with in this time and age when it comes to love, when it comes to romantic affair, is that there are times when the person seems right, okay, but it could mean that the timing or the place isn't ideal. And I will explain. We trust God that you will know God timing, and by we, I'm talking about it as a collective effort, because we're in a room, so I'm not the only one. That's just make it like imaginary right now. So it's more like an imaginary situation. And as I'm talking to you now, I'm imagining myself speaking to you guys. So that's why I'm using the word we. So or probably I should just go back to saying I. Okay. But whatever the case may be. But I trust God that you would know God's time. Each and every one of us would know God's time. I would know God's time. You would know God's time. And also try to unpack what I call God's pattern. To come to know and come to understand God's pattern. So yeah, whether you are listening for the first time or you've probably joined us before, and when you come to this episode, each episode, I want you to listen to it keenly. Please follow like wholeheartedly, even if you're doing something else. Here's the thing. There are times you meet someone and everything clicks. You are aligned spiritually, you are aligned mentally, emotionally rather, and for some reason it's not just coming together. For some reason the puzzle is not just fitting. Okay, so maybe they're in another season entirely in their lives. It could be that they are probably starting a career somewhere, or they are probably going to further their education in some country, and maybe both of you just know that God has probably one or two works to do in your lives separately before you can mesh paths. But before I move much more deeper, before I say let's fly, let me begin with a story. And I know you might be wondering, why story? I try much as possible to share stories on each episode of the podcast so it is relatable. Okay, so I'm not just speaking abstractly, just saying something off the top of my head. That is why I give you guys story or not story in each episode, and by God's grace, I'm not changing anytime soon. Let me just add that part. I'm not changing anytime soon. So back to our story, just something that is quite relatable, and I believe, we understand what we're saying. We understand what is actually going on, right? So here's the thing. There's this guy, which I would call Michael. Okay. So let's just call him a brother Michael, who met this kind of a cute sister during a conference. Okay. And both of them were believers. Both of them were active in their respective ministry that God has entrusted into their hands. And they, in a way, have undeniable chemistry. Of course, you can't really say you want to begin a relationship with someone if there's no some form of attraction, right? So they prayed about it, as every Christian should, but every time they sought for a confirmation from God as regards their relationship, they feel it's not yet time. They feel it's not yet time because God hasn't given a response yet. Okay, they feel it's not yet time because God hasn't in any way given them an affirmative answer. Michael had a clear assignment to serve in missions for 3 years in East Africa, and while the lady on the other hand, the cute lady she met, had to finish a medical residency in Nigeria. But they just had to obey. Okay, they did. And as God would have it, through divine providence, how God does this thing, we have no idea. Of course, no one does. But 3 years down the line, their paths aligned. They met again. The mission was completed. Whatever the Lord has entrusted Michael to do in East Africa was actualized, and now they are married with 2 kids. Okay, so what is the essence of this story? Why am I sharing what I'm sharing? One thing I would love to point out, though, is that I have said constantly that when you are emotionally, mentally, or even spiritually ready, the relationship would happen, right? I know I've said that in the previous podcast, but there may come a time in your life that when you are ready, every aspect of your life is ready, and God will say it's not yet time. Because I know that when I started this episode now, even if you don't remember me saying to the previous episode, I said you have to be ready mentally, you have to be ready emotionally, you have to be ready in every areas. But there are times that you are ready, everything, like you are ready. When it comes to maturity, you're mature. Okay, like everything, just check every boxes. But God is saying it's not yet time for you to be in a relationship with someone you found. Okay, so there may be a delay like that of Michael. There may be some sort of delay that in a way will seem as though it's killing the relationship. But if you would ask me, I would say the relationship is being preserved. If you would ask me, so that in a way speaks to Kairos and Chronos. Okay, because believe it or not, I know I've had so many testimonies from people that when some people ask them what regrets do you have in marriage, they'll be like, oh, I wish I married this person earlier. That may be true. Yes, of course, that may be true. But when it comes to God things, right, there are Kairos and there are Chronos. And sometimes, guess this, right? I want you to like just guess. Or why am I saying you should guess? Nah, don't bother guessing. Don't bother guessing. But the thing is, sometimes the challenge right here might not necessarily be timing. Okay, it may just be the environment. What do I mean? Okay, if you are someone that is conversant with scripture, we had Philip the evangelist, okay, and that should be at 8 if I'm not mistaken, when God had to move Philip from Samaria to meet the Ethiopian eunuch. So right mission, wrong location initially, right? Or to God had to do his own stuff. But here's the thing, a relationship, sometimes God shifts you because the setting you are in is not conducive for what he's trying to do. It's not conducive at all. And we need to also understand that the environment we are many times have a way of influencing our belief system. Okay, if whatever culture or whatever mindset that is prevalent in that environment, in a way, if we have not carefully would I use the word carefully guarded our hearts, right, those mindsets would have an impact in us. So one thing that God does is that he shifts you, he changes your environment. Okay, it changes your environment so that when you get to meet new people, you get to go to a new environment or whatever the case may be, or you begin to interact with different people, there should be a shift in your belief system. There'll be a shift in your ideology. Okay, let me share that example with you guys, and I'm sure that it is relatable, right? It is relatable. So there is another lady which I would call by the name, let's say Chiamaka. So she met the guy she connected with, and one thing is important that I state clearly, that though they were in different ministry culture. And what do I mean by that? There are times whereby I have listened to relationship talks, and one of the things they say repeatedly is that it is better to get married to someone from someone that attends the same church, probably the same denomination as them. And the reason being is that if they go out to meet someone else, they cannot testify as regards the doctrine they are receiving. Okay, that speaks as to the environment that I was sharing earlier on. They may not in any way testify. So if somebody from, let's say for example, name of the church is ABC, they'll say, oh, please, it's advisable you get married to someone or a sister or a brother from ABC, so I'm going to XYZ. Why? Because of the environment. Whatever you cannot probe whatever they've been receiving. And marriage, of course, is a long-time contract. Like, you get what I'm saying? So that is it. So here is the thing, both of them are in different ministerial culture, or there's a different ministerial environment. And the guy that Chiamaka has connected with is more or less like in a highly traditional church setting, while Chiamaka, of course, is missionary minded, missionary focused. Like, everything about her is going to the mission. They are so spiritual, into the villages, outreaches, like that. So they both felt what I would say is strain because their environment, which of course shapes the culture. So when I'm talking about culture, I'm not just talking from tribe, but culture also in doctrine. Okay, so it shapes like their different environments. So how would I put it now? The strain, right? They felt the strain because of their environment, the culture, as it has turned out to shape not only rhythms and values, but also expectations. Okay, they ended the relationship, but it didn't end in bitterness. They just realized that the milieu, which I would call the location right now, wasn't aligned with what God wanted for their future. Okay, and it's all good. A broken marriage or a broken engagement, I'm sorry, a broken engagement or a broken relationship is better than a broken marriage. Okay, you may want to ask, how can I know that this is God's time? So let me explain it in details. And wait a minute, you just feel as though I'm teaching. I don't know, it's in a way seem as though I'm teaching, and I do not know why. I don't know why I'm playing that way as I'm recording this podcast, but in a way you feel as though I'm just standing for everyone I'm teaching. But please, let's just go. Probably when I don't know, probably when I'm with someone else, and I'll see how it could be conversation like. But notwithstanding, I have outlined like four. Yeah, come on, Kevin, let's flow. Let me see how it will seem as I'm teaching. But that's where I feel right now. So let's just go with the flow. So yeah, number one way you can use God's time is that there's not something known as confirmation through prayer and through the word. If I thought you don't know anything about God, let's just assume you do not know anything about God. But one thing you should know is that God is not an author of confusion. That is one thing you must know and know keenly. You keep feeling peace in one moment and anxiety in the next. You just have to pause. Okay, God is not an author of confusion. If by adventure you say you prayed and you're feeling peace, and some other time you're feeling anxiety, please pause. Okay, His timing comes with sustained clarity. Okay, God speaking doesn't come with emotional waves. There are times that God will say yes and your emotions are saying no, right? That is just basically one of the things. And that's happened time and again when we see people say, oh, I'm having peace, and the next thing something else happened and you say, I don't feel like it again. You just need to understand that relationship is a commitment irrespective of your emotions. The same way I am committed to you guys, right, to this podcast. It doesn't come with feeling. I need to show up. The same way with relationship, you need to show up. Romantic relationship, okay. Another way you can know is that it is God's time. I mean, no, when it's God's time, I beg your pardon, is that it will align with purpose. I shared this in the previous episode. Okay, this cannot be overemphasized. It just cannot be overemphasized. And the Bible says that can two work together except they agree. And each time I have the opportunity to share something about marriage that I found out, I will say it. And what is that? I know we've heard that marriages come together of a man and a wife, right? A man and a woman to become husband and wife. So the union of the soul and the body. But one thing I do believe is that marriage is a union of purpose and calling. Okay, so it's not just consummating it during on the wedding night and being joined together on the altar. That's for me. It's all about everything. Everything sums up. That of course inclusive, but it also sums up that marriage is also a union of calling and purpose. Whatever God has called the man must complement whatever it is with the woman. So you can't say God is leading you somewhere and the relationship that you are claiming that God has brought your way is different from that of the lady. the ladies' own complements the guys' own, and the guys' own complement the ladies' own. Okay, so that speaks about moving in the same direction. If you're not moving in the same direction spiritually or purpose wise, that is not time. It can never be time. It just can never be time. Trust me, it just can never be time. So no matter how much you like the other person, no matter the feelings, no matter the butterflies in the stomach, no matter how much of you being shy when you're around the person, no matter how much of goosebumps you feel, come on, it just can never be time. Okay, and the third one which I would give, the third point, is that of counsel from trusted spiritual authority. And the Bible reminds us that in the multitude of counselors there are safety. That, of course, is a common knowledge found in Proverbs, right? It's found, of course, in Proverbs. And this isn't about handing over your decision making to them. Of course, it's not like they're thinking for you or in a way choosing for you in quotes. But having godly counselors, having trusted people that you can confide in, okay, people that can confirm or caution what you are feeling or what you are sensing or whatever conviction you seem to have gotten along the line. It stopped here, in all honesty. Like you are at an advantage. Okay, you are at an advantage. And the last one I would say is that of John 14:27, that says, "The peace I give, not as the world giveth." Mind you, of course, the last point is peace, but mind you, peace is not everything. What I mean by that, let me quickly state that, because I need to just quickly state that for someone who misquote me. What I mean by that is, it shouldn't just be peace that you have. So it shouldn't just be peace. Whatever you like, that's why we have alignment with purpose. That's why we have counsel from trusted authority, spiritual authorities. You get what I'm saying? Because I doesn't get to add that part, because there are certain times to say we feel peace and it's not from Jesus. Okay, even our emotions in quotes can give us peace, right? But the thing is, sometimes we feel peace because it's infatuation. Sometimes you feel peace because it's desperation. But one thing about peace that comes from God is that it can stand the test of time. God's peace remains even when circumstances shake. Alright? God's peace always remains. And one thing I heard from a preacher, which I would want to throw in here, is that everything can be tested with prayer. And that has to do with peace also. Because if you feel, you're having peace in this matter, take it up to God and keep praying about it. And if you keep having peace and peace and peace, it means it's from God. But if that peace leads to anxiety, it means it wasn't God that told you in the first place. This is a litmus test. Prayer works every time. Trust me, prayer works every time. And that's a litmus test rather, for you to know if the peace you are feeling is actually from Jesus. Okay, and I know we've in a way come this far, and I know by God's grace you've got to one or two things from this episode, but let's take it a bit much more higher than it was before, and let's speak about God's pattern in the relationship. God's pattern. And I want to state categorically that based on observation, right, that God pattern follow 3 stages, which I would call the preparatory stage, the alignment stage, and what I would also call the release stage. And what do I mean by all of this? So number 1, preparation stage. Like Joseph in Egypt, right? God works on your character, resources, and even mindset before a romantic journey comes into place. Because believe it or not, yes, Joseph may have had unpleasant experiences before he became a prime minister, but each of the experiences that he had shaped his character. Okay, now Let's take for example, realize that he interpreted dream for someone and the person forgot about him for 2 years. When he came back, there was no record of him doing anything as regards that person, or saying, "Oh, I'm not here now and you are there now. Why did you do it earlier?" Blah 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 blah. Or the one that hurt him the most, the one whereby he was falsely accused. There was nowhere in the Bible that spoke or revealed that Joseph hurt Potiphar's wife, or he went out to look for him and look for her rather and said, "Look how you did, I'm not in this position," blah 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 blah. And thirdly, there was no record in the Bible that Joseph called his brothers and said, "Look at what you did to me, you sold me out." But the Bible clearly stated that even when his brothers came after the death of their father and said, "We are sorry, want to be a servant, we know you have hurt you, blah 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 blah," Joseph was like, "Calm down. Whatever you did, God used it to bring me here to preserve you guys." But the backstory is this: it speaks of forgiveness. You can't really stay or state categorically that you want to be in a relationship that will lead to marriage and you wouldn't forgive your partner. That is not possible. So forgiveness is a thing, right? Forgiveness is truly a thing. So one of the patterns that God uses, in whatever environment He places you in whatever situation or circumstance He leads you through, He would work on your character. He would work on your character. He would work on your character. Okay, all of those things that you think, that all of those baggages in quotes that you've carried with you, He would cut them off, right? He would cut them off, because it's not needed for this phase of life that you're entering, this new phase that involves someone's son, that involves someone's daughter. Okay. And the second one, that's with alignment. So purposes and depths begin to converge naturally. That's one thing that you would see. There will be no traces of being manipulated. There will be no traces of being coerced or being forced into the relationship. Right? There will be no forceful situations. There will be no manipulative situations. Purposes, paths, destiny will begin to align. And the third one is that there's going to be a release. Okay? Release in the sense that at the appointed time, God will give you a clear yes. It's not going to be clouded. Things will begin to fall into place. You don't have to compromise on your values. You don't have to give into compromise because you want to enter a relationship. That is the truth of the matter. That is the truth. See, Adam had to be in assignment before God brought Eve. God didn't create Eve before Adam. God didn't create Eve because Adam was idle. Yeah, that's what I mean. So He created her when Adam was, in quotes, fulfilling purpose. What was that? He was tending the garden, right? Even when Eve came, both of them were, God would come in the cool of the day and they would fellowship. So you can't claim, in quotes, that God is leading you to someone and so if you can fellowship together. You need to know this. Another litmus test is you can't claim that God is leading you to somebody and the person ends up telling you that your relationship with God is too serious or it's getting much more uttered upon me. I cannot bear this, tone it down. That can be from God. Okay? If truly it is from God, God would, the person rather, would make sure that your relationship with God supersedes your relationship with Him or her. Because God first, then the other person second. The person will make sure that you chase God harder. The person will make sure that your relationship with God is fruitful. Okay? And but notwithstanding, I believe you guys get the gist. Okay? I believe you do get the gist. But let's just have some form of insight into research. So a study in the Journal of Marriage and Family shows that couples who began their relationship in seasons where they were both emotionally and financially stable had a 47% higher satisfaction rate in marriage than those who began during unstable or transitional season. So based on all this thing that I just read, what's the translation? It simply means that it just simply means that readiness matters as much as romance. Okay, that basically the audience that I've just read to you guys. That's what it means. But my final thought on this is this. My final thought on this episode is that the right person at the wrong time can feel like an heartbreak. But in God's eyes, it might just be protection, man. It might just be God protecting you. And yes, the wrong environment, which of course shapes how we think, which of course shapes our ideology, which of course influence our doctrine means teaching. Trust me, it can make the best of intentions to crumble. It can make the best of intention crumble. And yeah, Kairos moments, as we are talking about Kairos Chronos. Kairos timing is about when your growth, your assignments, and the will of God intersect. So there's a sort of intersection or a convergence between your growth, between the will of God, and yes, your assignments. And when this happen, like I used to say in every episode, you don't have to force it. You wouldn't force being in a relationship with this person. You wouldn't force the attraction. You wouldn't force the love. You wouldn't force nothing. And as Isaiah 60 verse 22 rightly put it, that when the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. When the time is right for your relationship, when the time is right for everything, God will make it happen. And God makes everything beautiful in His timing. That is what is worth noting, right? So all of these things wouldn't happen because your loneliness is louder than your Chronos time, or as the case may be. So all of this wouldn't happen because people are actually when. And of course, I understand how frustrating that can be. I understand how annoying also that can be. And sometimes, it puts pressure on you, and we don't need pressure. There's nothing we do in this life that will put God under pressure. And since we are a child of God, or children of God rather, we are not supposed to be under pressure to do certain things. No honesty, really. So everything just boils down to the fact that God is saying now, and now. You get? So, my dear brother and my dear sister listening to this episode, I would say, wait well, build well, trust in God's time, and your heart and your career season will agree together. Okay, so until next time when I release another episode, enjoy the process, and enjoying the process, enjoy God. That's why it's very important. Enjoy God, enjoy His benevolence, enjoy His direction, and believe that He's truly a shepherd. Yes, believe that He's truly a shepherd, your shepherd. Not just believing that He is a shepherd, but believing that He is your shepherd. So if He is your shepherd, it means He's going to direct you in the right path. He's your shepherd and you are a sheep, right? So it's going to direct you in the right path. So until next time, thank you guys for doing this with me. Bye bye.